Yo, what is up guys, Gray here, and today we are ranking all of the mons that have been leaked for the Crown Tundra DLC. We're going to put it into like usual league tiering system, so obviously tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 and tier 5. As well as I've got the Ubers in here, so I thought I'd create a tier for that as well. And of course, this goes without saying, there's going to be spoilers in this video. If you don't want to be spoiled like what mons are returning, or first off you clicked on the video, so you've probably seen the ones that are returning because they're on the screen right now. And also, if you don't want to know what moves they get, things like that, I'm going to be going through it all in this video. So if you don't want to see any of that, then click off and come back, I guess, after the DLC has dropped. But I'm not going to waste too much time. We're going to get straight into it, and the first mon on the list is Nidoqueen. And Nidoqueen's notable moves that it's gaining in this gen are Rock Blast, Hex, High Horsepower, Body Press, and Scorching Sands is an Isle of Armor move tutor move. I should probably also preface this by saying there could be potential extra moves that these mons learn. I know somebody noted that Crobat gets Tailwind, which it never has before, so there's potential for new tutors or new TMs, new TRs, something along those lines in the with the DLC, so we don't actually fully know what they're going to be learning. This is all just things that have been data mined, so that's what we're going off of. But yeah, Nidoqueen has always been like a solid sort of high tier 3, low tier 2 mon. And I think with Scorching Sands, there's potential it does make it into tier 2. Just off the Isle of Armor like DLC draft league, I'd say that Nidoqueen could probably fit into the tier 2 quite comfortably, but it depends on really which league you go to, because people have very different opinions. I would put it right up at the top of tier 3. I think it's going to be very good. Sheer Force is still really strong, but because of Sheer Force, if you leave Scorching Sands would get boosted, but it also would then not have the chance to burn, so I don't think you're going to really get too much more out of it. Moves like Rock Blast, Hex, and Body Press, I don't think you're getting really any value out of that. And High Horsepower, I don't think has a secondary effect, so yeah, I just don't think it's really gaining too much. I guess Hex could potentially be good if you're running like Toxic Spikes Hex, something along those lines, but I don't think it's enough to really bump it up to like a solid tier 2 mon. I think the same goes for Nidoking. I think Nidoking is slightly inferior in Draft League. I think it's still very good. It's more offensive than Nidoqueen, and it does gain the same moves: Rock Blast, Hex, High Horsepower, Body Press, and Scorching Sands. But like with Nidoqueen, half the time you want to run, all the time with Nidoking you want to run Sheer Force. I guess with Nidoqueen you could get away with Poison Point and have Scorching Sands, but I think that's probably just a waste of a really good ability. Also, the chance of getting a Poison Point before getting the burn off, I don't think it's worth it. So yeah, Nidoking I think has always been like basically wherever Nidoqueen is, Nidoking is right next to it, because these two mons are virtually the same but do different jobs. It's really weird. Nidoqueen has always been more defensive, can be offensive, whilst Nidoking is the offensive but can be defensive, but they tend to be pretty much like linked together just because they have the same movesets and really like the same role on a team. If you're going to pick it up, it's because you want something with Stealth Rock, with Toxic Spikes to have good offense, and it's whether you want like a really offensive wall breaker or whether you want more defensive kind of check to fairy type stuff like that. Next up we've got Golbat, and I think that's still going to be tier 5. It doesn't really gain anything this gen. In fact, it gains nothing at all in terms of new moves, so I think the Golbat is still going to be a tier 5 pick, and I think it's going to be actually pretty good value for tier 5. Whether you want to run it with like heavy duty boots or with Eviolite, I still think it's a really solid defogger, and with access to moves like Super Fang and U-Turn, it has good utility and isn't necessarily all that passive. It can break subs obviously with Super Fang. Does still have its stabs. It's not necessarily the strongest mon, but you can run like a nasty plot set if you want to. So I think it's still got good value as a tier 5, but it's certainly a tier 5 mon. Next up we've got Jinx, and honestly this is also tier 5, and I think it might even be worse than Golbat. It does gain Psychic Terrain, Future Sight, Expanding Force, and Triple Axle as notable moves. I should probably say that a lot of these mons do get extra moves as well, but these are the ones that really kind of mean anything in Draft League or competitive as a whole. I wouldn't say as a whole, because VGC is some different moves have more viability, but this is obviously for singles. Triple Axle really not doing anything for Jinx. It has like 2 attack, Expanding Force could be quite nice on a Psychic Terrain team, so with Indeedee or the what will be newly released Tapu Lele. It also can set up its own Psychic Terrain now, and access to Future Sight. I think Future Sight is the best move it's getting this gen, but even then, I don't think it's really doing all that much for Jinx. It's always been fairly quick and fairly offensive, but it just has no defense at all, and its typing is just so weak to so many things. I think that Jinx is probably going to be no better off, even with the introduction of heavy duty boots. I think it's still it's not gaining much from it, so I think it's still a tier 5 mon. Electabuzz is probably top end tier 5. I would say it's probably going to be roughly around where Manectric is, and I think Manectric this gen without Hidden Power Ice is definitely a tier 5 mon. I'm pretty sure its stats are very similar, but the only difference is it can run Eviolite, but I think it's potentially lacking in terms of moves or coverage moves that it can get. It could potentially be at bottom end of tier 4. I could see that along with things like Raichu and Luxray. I think you probably could get away with putting it there, but I think Electabuzz, it doesn't gain anything from this gen outside of losing Hidden Power Ice. So I think it's definitely worse this gen. Magmar again doesn't really gain anything, and I don't think it was too great to begin with. You're stuck between really wanting to run heavy duty boots or Eviolite, and if you run boots, then you're obviously losing out a lot of bulk. You have to be more offensive, and if you're Eviolite, then you're going to be taking 25% every time you come in. So I think Magmar has always been a solid tier 5 mon, certainly underrated actually as a tier 5. I very rarely see it get picked up, but it's actually not bad. It originally was meant to be a solo Pokemon by itself. It wasn't meant to have an evolution, so certainly I think Magmar is pretty decent as a tier 5, but I don't think it's necessarily going to be moving anywhere this gen. Omastar I think is probably going to be in a solid tier 4. Its notable moves it gains is Pin Missile, Liquidation, and Meteor Beam. Honestly, unless you're running some kind of heat set, I don't think you're ever running Meteor Beam. You could run a White Herb Meteor Beam set, but I just don't see it. Pin Missile really doesn't help you too much, and Liquidation is just a harder hitting water type move to be able to kind of replace. I think I used Waterfall before, so it does do a little bit more damage. I still think it has fantastic utility, learning Stealth Rock Spikes and Toxic Spikes, as well as Shell Smash. I think that it definitely has a niche on any team as a potential setup sweeper and obviously hazard stacker. But it's never going to be better than tier 4 in my opinion. I don't think it's got the bulk, it's not got the offensive stats to really be pushing that tier 3 slot, especially when you look at Nidoqueen and Nidoking. It's a long way off of being that good in my opinion. Next up we got Kabutops, and I think this may just push into tier 3 this gen. Just because Rain is so prevalent, I think it's definitely a better Dreadnought. I believe it has better speed and better attack, or at least has better speed and better coverage, because this gen it learns Rock Blast, Liquidation, Psycho Cut, Cross Poison, and Leech Life. It does get access to Meteor Beam as well, but you're not running a special Kabutops. So I think the main ones here to look at are Leech Life and Cross Poison. Liquidation obviously hitting much harder in the Rain. Rock Blast I always love to be able to break things like subs and sashes. So yeah, Kabutops I think this gen is looking really threatening. I think it might just push tier 3 because Rain has kind of elevated in this gen. It's definitely a lot more of a threat than it used to be. So yeah, Kabutops could be really scary this gen. Aerodactyl I think honestly is really good this gen. It gets access to Rock Blast, Dragon Dance, Psychic Fangs, Hurricane, Meteor Beam, and Dual Wing Beat. And the two moves to really kind of look at are Dragon Dance and Dual Wing Beat. Psychic Fangs is nice coverage, and if you want to run a special set, then you can now, kinda, with Meteor Beam and Hurricane, but again, you're not really going to want to run that when you get a chance to run a Dragon Dance set. It finally has a good stab. It did have Wing Attack before, and I guess it had Fly, but it really would have lacked a strong flying stab if well, since Z moves have gone, you used to be able to run Z Fly and get away with it, but I think this gen, it could well be very good. Actually, I don't think it's as good as those two. I think it's probably just going to be underneath Nidoking and Nidoqueen. But I think it's going to be a super scary one. The ability to have heavy duty boots this gen with Dragon Dance and Dual Wing Beat with Stone Edge or Rock Blast, and then whatever coverage it gets things like Crunch, Earthquake, obviously Psychic Fangs now, Ice Fang. There's so many things it can hit with. I think Aerodactyl is going to be a big threat. I don't think it's necessarily going to be like a top tier sweeper or anything like that, but I certainly think it's going to be very good. It still has its niche as a potential bulky defogger, especially with heavy duty boots this gen, and also can be very good as a speedy stealth rocker, just as a good lead. Its attack and its speed is still kind of nuts, so especially its speed, like that is just really good as a focus / lead. So I think Aerodactyl could potentially still have could be very good this gen, and I think you're going to see it used a lot more than you were in previous gens. Next up we got I wouldn't say Aerodactyl, that's an Articuno. Articuno gains Weatherball, Air Slash, Brave Bird, Dual Wing Beat, and Triple Axle. Lots of physical coverage here, but honestly, like, its physical attack isn't much worse than its special attack. You could definitely get away with it. Triple Axle, Brave Bird hits harder, I guess, than Ice Beam, Air Slash. Like, I don't know, because you could always run like Ice Beam, Hurricane, stuff like that. It's more reliable to run Brave Bird, Triple Axle. But I don't think it quite makes up for the 10 points of attack difference you're losing from running physical over special. So I think really it's not gained all that much outside of heavy duty boots. I think heavy duty boots are huge for it. It's always been fairly bulky, and just having the ability to not be taking 50% from rocks on the switch in, it's going to be so nice for it. And I think it's going to be solid tier 4. I don't think it's any better than that because it's still offensively very weak. But we're going to definitely be able to see it be performing better in this gen. I think you will see it drafted more. And yeah, Articuno is going to be solid. Zapdos is going straight into tier 1. This thing is going to be an absolute menace this gen. It learns Weatherball, Air Slash, Brave Bird, Hurricane, Dual Wing Beat, and Rising Voltage. Honestly, Hurricane and Weatherball are the only 2 moves that you're going to be looking at. On a rain team with Thunder, Hurricane, Weatherball, Roost, or something like that, or even Agility, this thing is going to be absolutely terrifying. There's very few things that switch into the coverage of water, electric, and flying. So yeah, Zapdos is going to be terrifying. It also gets Air Slash for if you don't want to run it on a rain team and you don't want the ability to be constantly missing your Hurricanes. You can run Air Slash now as well, it does learn that. So it's going to be using a pretty good flying stab, which it's never really had in the past. It always had to use Air Cutter, and you tend to run Heat Wave instead just because it kind of hits the same things. It means you can hit the Steel types better. I think that still is a possibility. You can still run like Thunderbolt, Heat Wave, and Air Slash, or you can run U-Turn or Volt Switch. Anything like that. It's still a fantastic bulky mon as well. With heavy duty boots, it becomes even better at being bulky. And yeah, it's just a fantastic mon. I think it's going to be like a solid top tier 1 pick this gen. Certainly better than it was last gen. Moltres, I think we're probably going to see it about there. I think in tier 3 it's going to be solid. Heavy duty boots definitely makes it better. But this gen, it gains Weatherball, Mystical Fire, Flare Blitz, Brave Bird, Dual Wing Beat, Burning Jealousy, and Scorching Sands. I think the most notable move there is definitely Scorching Sands. Weatherball is also really nice for if you want to run it on like a rain team, so you can run like Hurricane, Weatherball, I know, Scorching Sands maybe. Unlikely you're going to run a fire type move in the rain, but you never know. I think Scorching Sands is really nice coverage for it. It's able to hit the fire types or bulkier fire types for good damage now, as well as already being like a fairly good bulky mon, fairly strong offensively as well. I think it's going to be settling nicely in tier 3. Like, it's going to be definitely a lower end tier 3. I still don't think it's going to be pushing like a first round tier 3 pick, but I still think it's going to be very, very solid. Next up we got Dragonite, and again I think that's going to be a tier 1 mon. This one is one of those that's like on the fence a little bit, I guess. It could potentially be overhyped, but I've been really looking forward to using Dragonite in this gen. And once I realized it gets Dual Wing Beat this gen, I was like, yeah, this thing's going to be solid. Hydro Pump, Air Slash, Body Press, Dual Wing Beat, and Scale Shot are the moves that it learns. And it's already a terrifying setup sweeper. And now it has a good flying stab to be able to actually take advantage of. In the past it had to run Fly, and that's just not a good stab to have. Unless you have Z moves, but obviously Z moves are not a thing anymore. And so I think Dragonite is going to be like filling one of two roles. It's either going to be a setup sweeper, I guess 3 actually. It could also still have its choice band set because it learns things like extreme speed, outrage. It has just all the coverage in the world, and it can also be a really good bulky mon with heavy duty boots and multi-scale. You're going to be able to run things like Heal Bell, Roost, Defog much more effectively, and with the multi-scale you can always keep building yourself back up, so you're taking very little damage. And I think bulky sets of Dragonite are going to be really good this gen. Also, another thing is that Inner Focus got the buff where it no longer takes the attack drop from Intimidate. So you can also run Inner Focus and just set up a Dragon Dance, and your attack is never going to get lowered. So I think Dragonite is going to be super scary this gen. If it doesn't learn Dual Wing Beat, I'm going to be so sad, but I'm sure it does. These moves are all data mined, so realistically they should be right. But we know from the last lot of data mines there's going to be 1 or 2 things that are a little bit wrong, and I really hope that's not one of them. Next up we got Crobat, and I think Crobat just fits nicely in tier 3. It's certainly going to be very good this gen. Again, it's a solid defogger. It's with heavy duty boots this gen. It means it's not taking rocks damage when it comes in. Still a really good bulky pivot. It's going to be a very good like quick pivot as well, and it does have much more utility. Now it has Hex, Hurricane, Dual Wing Beat. We have seen it use Tailwind as well in the trailer. I think it was Tailwind that we saw, I'm pretty sure. So in VGC at least, it's going to have Tailwind, which is really good. I guess it does work for singles, but it's not as prevalent. Hurricane is like the big one on the special side, and Dual Wing Beat is really nice on the physical side. It means it has a strong flying stab that means it doesn't take recoil, which I think on a bulkier mon, it's kind of what you want. And on the special side, its special set is already pretty decent, but now it has Hurricane to be able to hit even harder. Nasty Plot sets are going to be even more threatening. But yeah, Crobat I think has always been a solid tier 3, and I think it's just going to stay there. I think it's still going to be really good. And yeah, moving on, we got Raikou, and I think Raikou is our first tier 2 mon. It gains access apparently to Scold, which is just absurd. It gets Agility, Scold, Aura Sphere, Weather Ball, and Rising Voltage. I think the main moves you're looking there are like Scold. Aura Sphere on any set is also really nice, because in the past you had to run a Rash Nature, I want to say it was, to be able to run Aura Sphere. So being able to just run that with any nature is going to be really nice. Weather Ball is great for, again, rain teams. Thunder, Weather Ball, Scold on rain. That's going to be terrifying, especially with the ability to now set up speed with agility. Yeah, this mon's going to be really good. I don't think it's quite pushing tier 1. I still think it's like a solid tier 2. But for electric types, I think it's going to be one of the best ones this gen. Probably only beaten by like Zeraora, Zapdos, returning Thundurus, and returning Coco as well. So yeah, Raikou really good this gen. Carmine sets are going to be really good with Scold. You can even run a bulkier set, like a physically defensive set with Scold to get Skull Burns, and then just pressure stall. I've been pressure stalled by a Raikou in the past, so I could definitely see it. Next up we've got Entei, and I think Entei is like borderline. What does it gain this gen? It gains Weather Ball, Agility, Flare Blitz, and Scorching Sands. I don't think it's gaining quite enough to make it into tier 2, but I think it's going to be like top end tier 3, wherever it is with Darmanitan. I always put Darmanitan and Entei together. They aren't exactly the same. Darmanitan is slightly less bulky, but hits harder. Entei also has the ability to run like a Carmine set, which is even better with Scorching Sands actually now. So that's always a possibility. You can also run Entei on like a Sun team maybe this gen, and be able to get more value with things like Weather Ball. And like you could run a special set with Weather Ball, Solar Beam, Scorching Sands, Agility, something like that. I think just gaining the ability to raise its speed is one of those things that people overlook, but I think Entei always kind of lacked a little bit of speed, and being able to boost it now is going to be super nice. But I think it's still just going to sit wherever Darmanitan is. I think that Entei is going to be just sat next to it. Next up we got Suicune. I think Suicune is definitely going to be tier 2. Doesn't really gain anything this gen particularly. It just gets Weather Ball, Agility, Air Slash, Liquidation, and that's it actually. It doesn't learn Flip Turn, unfortunately. I was really hoping it would. but it doesn't. Air Slash was a move that it could already get, I believe, but it had to be a certain ability, like Raikou with Aura Sphere. So it has that with any nature now, which is really nice. I could be wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure that's how it was. Weather Ball means that again it can be run on a weather team. Agility, I don't think you're ever going to really run it on Suicune. Its offenses aren't really good enough to be able to run an agility set, but Liquidation is an interesting one. If you're running like a curse set, you can now run a more powerful water type move. And I don't think curse is very prevalent at all. I think you're going to be running like the special Crocoon or the toxic Protect Coon. Like there's a lot of Suicunes that are better than physical, so I don't expect anyone to be running that. Next up we got Lugia and Ho-Oh. Both are definitely going to be Ubers. They are broken. I don't think I need to really go into why those ones are broken. They're just extremely good and far too good for regular format. Sceptile I think is going to be a solid tier 4 one. It gains Cross Poison, Dragon Dance, Grassy Glide, and Scale Shot this gen. So it finally gets Dragon Dance, but sadly it doesn't get to Mega, so it's not as good. Mega Sceptile would have loved to have Dragon Dance and Scale Shot as well. Like that would have been really good. Grassy Glide definitely means it has a place on like a terrain team. But Cross Poison is its other move, and I think that's really just hitting grass types, and I guess fairy types as well, for good damage. I don't think it's necessarily giving it too much. I think it's a decent unburdened sweeper, especially with how many terrains there are now in a game. So I think Sceptile could definitely have a place on any kind of terrain team and be viable. It's still got a good speed stat, pretty decent attack stat. But yeah, I think on terrain you're going to see it most with like Grassy Seed or whatever, with Grassy Glide, Swords Dance, Acrobatics, and Filler Move. Certainly it's still going to be pretty good. I don't think it's going to be any better than tier 4 this gen, as it has been pretty much in every gen since it came out. Combusken I think is like top end tier 5, and that's mainly because it doesn't really gain anything this gen, as far as I'm aware. It doesn't get like the close combat and U-turn that Blaziken does, but it does gain, does still have its speed boost ability, which is really nice, and Combusken can be a really solid like tier 5 threat. I've definitely had some issues with Combusken in the past, so yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see this thing be decent in tier 5 this gen. It really doesn't do all that much, it's still a tier 5 mon, but yeah, it should have a nice niche in tier 5, which is really, really good for it. Blaziken, honestly, I think Blaziken's going to be really strong this gen, and I could be completely wrong with this. This is probably like one of the early hot takes, I guess, to an extent. I think Blaziken may be pushing tier 2. In fact, I'm going to put it at the bottom end of tier 2. I think it's going to be better than Entei this gen, and the reason I think it's going to be better is because it gets U-turn, close combat, Aura Sphere, Heat Crash, coaching, which really doesn't matter in singles, and Scorching Sands. So on the physical side, it gains momentum with U-turn. It gains a hard-hitting fighting stab that means that you're not potentially taking recoil. It's very, very spammable. And then on the special side, you gain Aura Sphere and Scorching Sands, and special sets are still viable. I don't think it's going to be the preferable set, but like a Scarf Blaziken, it's going to be a fantastic late game sweeper, or just like a late game cleaner even, not sweeper. It can also run high jump, not high jump kick, it can run Swords Dance and just like run through a team. Granted, Speed Boost is going to always be banned on Blaziken. Like Speed Boost will be banned in Draft League for as long as it's available, and like the meta game would have to shift massively, like a big power creep for Speed Boost to be allowed. But I think regular Blaziken this gen is going to be really strong. I think that's maybe a little bit too much. I'm going to put it at the top end of tier 3. I don't think it's quite tier 2. I don't think it's there with like Raikou and Suicune, but I think it's certainly going to be really powerful, and this gen I think it's going to be one of the best mons reintroduced into the game. Next up we got Swampert, and I think Swampert will probably be like towards the bottom end of tier 3. Yeah, I think wherever Seismitoad is, you'll see Swampert with it. It does a very similar job, but this gen it gains Bulk Up, Darkest Lariat, High Horsepower, Liquidation, Body Press, and unfortunately not Flip Turn either. If it got Flip Turn, I would be willing to put it up a bit more, but I just think that it does gain quite a bit. It does gain bulk up. It does gain body press for a defensive set. High horsepower means that it can hit through grassy terrain as well, and liquidation is a harder hitting stab than waterfall. Darkest Lariat, I guess, is nice coverage, but it's not necessary. I think you're probably hitting with Earthquake and Liquidation for more damage than Darkest Lariat. I think bulk up is a nice addition, but at the same time, it's not enough, in my opinion, to really push Swampert anywhere. So I think it's going to be decent this gen. I think it's going to be a solid defensive wall, solid rocker, but really not much more than that. Aggron, honestly, I think it's going to be like decent in tier 4. I think it's probably going to be better than Sceptile. It gains Hydro Pump for some reason, Crunch, High Horsepower, Body Press, Meteor, Beam, and Steel Roller. I think the main moves you're looking at there are probably like Crunch, Body Press, and Steel Roller. Terrains are super prevalent in this gen, so I think Steel Roller is probably quite good. And then you got Body Press coming off that base, what, 200 defense or something, close to like 180, somewhere around there. Yeah, that's going to be hitting really hard. And other than that, Aggron is pretty much the same mon. It's still kind of slow. Still got really good attack stat. It can be offensive or defensive, but I don't think it's going to be anywhere other than tier 4. Altaria is just tier 5. It's terrible. It needs its Mega Back to be any good. It gains Fire Spin, I guess, this gen, and Dual Wing Beat. I guess Dual Wing Beat kind of works for it because it does gain Flying Stab to use on a Dragon Dance set, but I still think it's just terrible. It's weak to rocks unless you run heavy duty boots, and it just doesn't have the offensive presence to really even do anything after a +1. So Altaria is just still going to be bad, unfortunately. Crazily, I think, is like a bottom end tier 4. Yeah, it's probably bottom end of tier 4. It's alright. It's a bulky grass type with Storm Drain. I guess it's like a Dracovish check. That's the best I can come up with. It's not bad. It's very defensive. It does gain Power Whip, Grassy Glide, and Meteor Beam this gen. Power Whip's a nice addition. Grassy Glide, I guess, gives it priority if there's a grassy terrain team, but I still think it's underwhelming. I don't think it's necessarily going to be any better this gen than it was in the last gen. Armaldo, I think, is just slightly better. It's really not any better at all. I guess Shadow Claw and Meteor Beam is its significant moves. Armaldo I do like. I think it's a good mon. Very good defensively, good defensive stats as well. Access to Rapid Spin and Stealth Rock, but I think that Armaldo is still pretty underwhelming. I think it'll still be down in the tier 4, and it'll be a decent budget pick, but I don't think it's going to be necessarily the first thing people want to pick up. I think even Crustle will be better to an extent because it gets spikes. Absol, it gains Air Slash, Close Combat, and that's it. I don't think that Absol really gains much from this gen. Like, Close Combat sure is nice, but it had superpower in the past. It doesn't mean that it's not lowering its attack, but it's still not very good, unfortunately. I'd love for Absol to be good. I think it's still going to be a tier 4 mon, and even then I think like that's probably like it's borderline tier 5 still. Walrein gains Source Dance, Hydro Pump, Heavy Slam, Liquidation, Body Press, and Steel Roller. I think that's actually like quite a few buffs it's got there. Hydro Pump means on the special side it's hitting for really good damage. Source Dance means that it has setup opportunity. It's still not very good. it's just still not very good. It does get Liquidation actually this gen as well. If it got Triple Axle, then maybe it would have been solid, but it doesn't gain Triple Axle. So really it's just relying on what Ice Fang for a nice type physical move. So it's still going to be tier 5. I think it's probably still going to be towards the... I think it might be better than Jinx this gen. It's still going to be tier 5. It's going to be near the bottom end of it. Relicanth gains Rock Blast, Liquidation, Body Press, Meteor Beam, and Scale Shot. Still going to keep it in tier 5. I don't think it's that great. I think it has potential. I've never seen it used, I don't think, in Draft League at all. But like Rock Blast, Liquidation, it gains Liquidation, so it's got a hard-hitting water type move. Like Head Smash is always going to be used over Rock Blast. Body Press, I don't think its defense stat is high enough to really warrant using that. Scale Shot could be quite nice as a dragon type move, just because, and the ability to raise your speed. But I think it's still going to be tier 5. Salamence, honestly, this is going to be tier 1. I don't know whether it's going to be better. I don't think it's going to be better than Zapdos, but Salamence is going to be just ridiculous this gen. With heavy duty boots, it means not taking a rocks damage, so bulky intimidate sets are really good. It also gains air slash, hurricane, dual wing beat, and scale shot. Hurricane is huge for a special set. I mean, air slash we don't want to miss, but special sets can now run Draco, Hurricane, Hydro Pump, Fire Blast. Like it's got some moves on the special side now. Physical can always be really good, and now it gets dual wing beat, so it has a flying stab. Much like Dragonite, it never had a good flying stab to use. Now it has a good flying stab. Dragon Dance sets are going to be super scary. I think this mon has like so much versatility now. It's just going to be kind of nuts. I think defensive sets are still really, really good. Intimidate plus Defog, you have the ability to run like it's basically you got to go into a match trying to counter a defensive set, to counter like a Choice Scarf set, Dragon Dance set, physical and special. Like it's going to be such a nightmare to prep for. Salamence is going to be really good this gen. Metang I think is like a solid tier 5 mon. It doesn't really get anything this gen, but in fact I don't think it's that high. I think it's probably like down this end, but I think Metang's still going to be pretty decent. If you have no budget left and you need a steel type, then Metang I think has always been solid. Eviolite with Stealth Rocks, it has a decent-ish attack stat. It's certainly like usable, but I'm not going into too much about Metang because it's a Metang. Metagross I think is going to be like a solid bottom end tier 2. So I think it's, oh man, I don't know. Yeah, it's better than, like, as part of me that wants to move some of these up because I think they're probably going to be better. What does Metagross get? It gets Cosmic Power, Brutal Swing, Expanding Force, Meteor Beam, and Steel Roller. I don't think it gains enough to put it in tier 2. I don't think it's actually better than any of these. I think it might be good there. Yeah, Metagross has always been a really solid mon. Agility, weakness, policy sets are really, really good on it. You can run it defensively, offensively, AV. It gets Stealth Rock. It gets now it gets Cosmic Power, so you can run. I don't think it gets Stall Power actually. I was about to say you can run Cosmic Power, Stall Power, but I don't think it gets Stall Power. But you can definitely run Cosmic Power and just have it be bulky, like Cosmic Power, weakness, policy, agility, something like that. It means that it's probably going to be able to sweep an entire team. Yeah, Metagross has always been really good. Good typing, solid attacking stats. I think it's very much like underdrafted. I don't think I see it enough, but it's a really, really good mon. Regirock I think is still going to be in tier 4, but I think it's definitely like a top end tier 4. It's probably pushing like bottom end tier 3 because it gets Rock Blast, Flash Cannon, Heavy Slam, Body Press, and Meteor Beam. Big move there is Body Press. This has got base 200 defense, so it can actually take a full advantage of it. And I think it's still a really solid bulky rock type. I think you can still run like a rock polish set if you want to. If you want to kind of give it an offensive swing, but you kind of need a weakness policy for that to work, which it definitely can do. It has got a bulk for it. Body Press means it's got a really solid defensive defensive move to use, because its attack stat isn't amazing. I just realized what time it is. I had to get to work in like, I had to get ready for work in about 20 minutes, so I need to fly through these ones. Regice is still going to be like bottom end tier 4. It gains nothing this gen. It's never been better than tier 4. Registeel I think it's going to be like bottom end tier 3. I think it's probably better than, it's probably about here-ish. I think it's maybe worse than Swampert. It does gain Body Press, Heavy Slam, Meteor Beam, and Steel Roller, but I don't think that's necessarily enough to push it any higher than where it's always been in this tier 3. Latias I think is going to be a really solid tier 2, possibly tier 1. Yeah, it's going to be very good. It gains Mystical Fire, Air Slash, Agility, Tri Attack, Baton Pass, Future Sight, Aura Sphere, Dual Wing Beat, and Scale Shot, and as well as Dragon Dance. But physical sets are less likely. You might want to run it now because you don't get. Actually, no, I think even then, because you don't get Hidden Power, you still want to run like Aura Sphere or my mind's blanking, Mystical Fire, and yeah, I think it's still going to be very solid. I think actually it's a tier 1. I feel like I just don't have enough mons in that tier 2. I think it's going to be like, it's less it's probably about as versatile actually as Dragonite and Salamence. I think it's probably about here. I think it could easily be bottom end of tier 1, and in fact I'm going to put it at tier 1. I think Latios also goes there. like all the dragons this gen are just going to be super scary when they come in. These mons get Mystical Fire and Aura Sphere, which have huge coverage moves for it. It means it can hit steel types more effectively. I think the only thing it's like kind of lacking is a move to hit fairy types, but even then, like Slice Shock from Latios is going to be so much damage to a fairy type. Kyogre and Groudon and Rayquaza are all going to be in Ubers. Don't really need to say why, they are broken. So these two, Rampardos and Bastiodon, actually haven't been announced for the game, or haven't been leaked for the game, but since all the fossils are in the game, it makes sense for these two to be in here. I think that Rampardos is probably going to be like a standard in tier 4. Really scary wall breaker, but just terrible defensive stats, terrible speed. So yeah, Rampardos isn't going to be very good. Bastiodon, honestly, it's down here. It's still not going to be good. It gained nothing this gen, really. It gained Steel Roller or Meteor Beam. It's not good. It's if it gained Body Press, maybe it had something to hit for any damage, but no, it still was bad. Hex, Phantom Force, Lash Out, and Poltergeist is what Spiritomb gets. It gains nice, like some nice buffs there, like Hex on the special side and Poltergeist and Lash Out. That's pretty good. I still think it's tier 4. I don't think it gains anything, gets like any better for it, but I think it's like probably around here in tier 4. It has offensive like some offensive moves to use now. Jeez. Poltergeist hits really hard. Lash Out, I don't think you're going to be using over. Does it get knockoff? I don't think it gets knockoff actually. So you might run Lash Out over like whatever dark type move it uses now. Gabite is going to be a solid tier 5. I think we could probably put it like down here somewhere. It's basically just a baby Garchomp. Garchomp I think is going to be like top end tier 2. I think these things gain tier 1 mons gain buffs, whilst Garchomp really didn't gain all too much. I said that it got Breaking Swipe, Scale Shot, and Scorching Sands. So Scale Shot actually does give it speed, but it does lower its defense, and defense is one of the better stats that it has. I think Garchomp is still going to be very threatening. I think it's almost like it's at the very bottom, I think, of this tier. It could potentially be tier 1, but I think for now we're going to put it in tier 2. Like, no hidden power obviously helps it a lot. I think some things did gain some ice coverage though to cover that. Electivire is going to be tier 4, but I think actually it's probably going to be like towards the top end of tier 4 if you ask me. It doesn't gain much in terms of moves this gen. It gets Weather Ball, Darkest Lariat, and Rising Voltage, so not a lot, but in a gen where electric types have lost their ability to use coverage moves, I think that Electivire's coverage is going to make it more viable than some other electric types. Magmortar gains a lot this gen. I think it's actually probably going to be top of tier 4. You could argue it might move into tier 3, but I don't think it's quite to that extent. Against Weather Ball, Mystical Fire, Burning Jealousy, and Scorching Sands. Scorching Sands means it now has something to hit fire types for good damage. Yeah, I think Magmortar's always been a strong wall breaker, and this gen with heavy duty boots and the access to Scorching Sands, I think it's going to be really solid. Uxie, I think it's tier 3. It's baby Cress. It's not as good as Cress, but I think it's still pretty solid. I would probably put it about here-ish. Decent Cleric. Not too bad, like in terms of like setup and stuff. It gains. So this is for all 3 of the late trios, by the way. They gain Drain Punch, Psycho Cut, Draining Kiss, Tri Attack, Baton Pass, Encore, Nasty Plot, Stored Power, Play Rough, and Expanding Force. Like that's a decent few moves. Like Draining Kiss on a Calm Mind set could be quite nice. Stored Power on Calm Mind sets would be kind of nuts. Nasty Plot is also a nice option if you want to try and run it offensive, but its offensive stats aren't great. Mesprit I think gains more. I think like those two are probably quite close together. Gaining Nasty Plot is really nice for it. It does mean it has some more offensive presence than Uxie, and also has access still to like Calm Mind, Stored Power. It gets Stealth Rock as well, so does Uxie. So like they definitely got some good viability. I think they're going to be solid, bulky psychics, but also have the ability to run other sets as well. Like Mesprit can definitely be offensive with Choice Scarf. I think it's very solid. I think it's going to be in tier 3. I've always preferred Mesprit over Uxie, but that's just my opinion. Azelf I think is going to be solid tier 2. Honestly, it doesn't gain much like to really make it better than where it was. It already had nasty plot, so it's not gaining anything there. But Store Power could be quite nice for it. Play Rough for a physical set is also really nice coverage. You can hit Dark types. And I guess Dragon types are super effective as well. Drain Punch is a solid physical option. It's really the only one of these. I guess Mesprit could also run physical, but I think Azelf runs it best. Other than that, I think Azelf has always been like a solid kind of fast, offensive psychic type, which also is a really solid lead as well. Access to stealth rocks, things like that, and explosion. So I think, yeah, Azelf's still going to be really good. It's going to be in tier 2. Dialga, Palkia, both Ubers. Giratina, Ubers. I don't think I need to go over those ones. In fact, I'm just going to shove Xerneas, Yveltal, Zygarde complete. I think that, oh no, Genesect, that can also go into the Ubers. Pheromosa, wherever it is, that's probably going to be Ubers. I don't see that coming out of Ubers anytime soon. I think that is about it. I guess if like Sheer Force Landorus, they're probably not going to be, like most leagues won't allow that. Oh, Naganadal as well, probably isn't going to be allowed. So we cleared out a few there. I've not got much time, so I'm going to go through these pretty quickly. Heatran, I think, is going to be like tier 2. It's going to be very solid tier 2, possibly pushing tier 1. This gen, it gains Self-Destruct, Body Slam, Heavy Slam, Heat Crash, Body Press, Burning Jersey, Scorching Sands, and Steel Roller. So Scorching Sands is really, really nice for it. Getting the ability to positively burn something. But I think the main thing it also gains this gen is the ability to run Flame Body, because now you can get a 30% chance to burn on physical moves. Could be really, really clutch in certain situations. Body Press could be really nice for defensive sets as well. It's always been in tier 2. I don't think it's necessarily pushed any higher. Regigigas, I think, is going to be like tier 4, but like not really any higher. It does gain Protect, Rest, Heat Crash, Darkest Lariat, High Horsepower, Body Press, and Terrain Pulse. Body Press could be really nice for like counteracting your slow start. Being able to hit with a defensive move. It has base 110 defense, if I remember rightly. So it does have a move to hit with. Protect means that you can effectively stall out your own slow start, but it's also very risky because it's very predictable. I think that it could potentially be setup fodder for certain mons. But if it gets through the slow start, it's a terrifying threat. Cresselia, honestly, I think is like top end tier 2, potentially tier 1. Because this gen, it gains Cosmic Power and Stored Power. It also gets Expanding Force, but honestly, Cosmic Power, Stored Power is like the only 2 moves. You just run Cosmic Power, Stored Power, Moonlight, Moonblast, something like that, and you're good. Like, you don't have to really run anything else. That is the set you're going to see on Crest most weeks. You might see like Sub, Calm Mind, Stored Power, or something like that. But yeah, Crest is going to be an absolute pain to deal with this gen. It's going to be gross, and I think that like Cosmic Power might just be something that pushes it over the edge. The only thing that's really like detrimental to it is the fact that it will be very easily statused, but it's still a very fast, I say very fast, it's a pretty fast super bulky mon with the ability to set up in your face and just be able to 1v6 teams. Victini, I think, is going to be bottom end of tier 1. Actually, I think it's better than those. I think it's better than most of them. I don't think it's better than Salamence, actually, this gen. Heavy Duty Boots is really nice for it, just because it doesn't take the rocks damage, but I think you probably want to run Scarf, Specs, Band, whatever, Life Orb, this gen. Mystical Fire, Baton Pass, Encore, Future Sight, Expanding Force, and Scorching Sands are the moves it learns. I think the main thing it gains on its special side is Scorching Sands. It now has a strong ground type move to use, which it never had before, so yeah, it's definitely better in this gen, but without Z moves, I think that is a bigger nerf than gaining Scorching Sands and Heavy Duty Boots is. But I still think it's a tier 1 mon by all means. Ordino is like a solid low tier normal type, I think probably around here-ish. Still, it doesn't really gain anything, gains Body Slam and that's it. But it does still act as a really nice bulky cleric, gets Regenerator, so its ability to stay alive is really frustrating. I think it's still going to be a solid tier 4 normal type to pick up. Caracosta, I think, is like a worse armor star. Honestly, I think it's probably just like top end of tier 5. Shell Smash sets are still pretty decent, but its speed is so slow that even after a Shell Smash, you pretty much get outsped by everything. It does gain Rock Blast, Razor Shell, Meteor Beam this gen, but really nothing to bump it up at all. Archeops I think is going to be better this gen. I think it's probably around here-ish. Heavy duty boots means that its defeatist is going to be delayed for a little bit. Rock Blast, Air Slash, Dual Wing Beat, Meteor Beam, and Lash Out. Honestly, Dual Wing Beat is a really nice buff for it. Rock Blast is a good move as well. You can also run a special side with Meteor Beam and Air Slash. So it's definitely got some versatility this gen. I think it's definitely got a fairly big buff, mainly just heavy duty boots. But I still think it might be better than that. I think it probably put like higher in tier 4. I still think it's going to be a tier 4 mod though. Cryogonal gains Self-Destruct, Avalanche, and Triple Axle. Honestly, there's nothing there that like makes any difference to it. I still think it's a decent Rapid Spinner, decent Defogger. Pretty solid Ice type with good special defense, but terrible defense. Good speed as well for a Rapid Spinner. And heavy duty boots definitely helps it this gen performance roll considerably better. Okay, so the genies here, they haven't actually been announced that the Therian forms are going to be in the game. You just kind of got to assume that they are because the regular forms are in the game. So we're going to go off the basis that they are. And Torn I'm going to put straight up at the top. This thing is going to be just absurd this gen. It gains Weather Ball, Body Slam, Nasty Plot, and Lash Out. Nasty Plot on Torn with already fantastic speed, great special attack stat, great bulk anyway. This thing's going to be a problem. Like, it's going to be so powerful. It can just kind of pivot in and out until it gets to a point in which you can just surf a Nasty Plot and win. Plus heavy duty boots makes it arguably the best defogger in the game. And yeah, I think there's not much more really to say about Torn. It's going to be just fantastic this gen. And it'll be a first round draft pick in every league. If it's not, I'll be shocked. Torn I think is actually really overlooked in this gen. Nasty Plot is going to be really nice for it. I think it gets Hurricane. I could be wrong. If it doesn't get Hurricane, then I'm certainly putting it too high. But it could certainly be very good this gen. Heavy duty boots makes it much more bulky and also able to kind of do what it needs to do a little bit better. It's better defogger mon. Honestly, I don't know much about Torn, but I think it's going to be better this gen. I'm sure it gets Hurricane. If it doesn't get Hurricane, then I'm certainly overrating it. Like, I think Nasty Plot Hurricane would be really, really strong. So that's why I got it there. Thundy, I think... Honestly, I'm not sure if it's better than Raikou. I think it might be worse this gen. Just because Raikou gains access to Scold, so it's basically got the same coverage. Like, Electric, Fighting, and... Electric, Fighting, Psychic, and Water instead of Grass. This gets Grass not over Scold. So I think like they're probably on par. Like Raikou is quicker with a worse special attack stat, but honestly I think like Thundy T is probably there, and I think Thundy I is maybe above Raikou. I think like Thundy I, just because of Prankster, is probably going to be better this gen, albeit Dark type still can switch in now on Prankster moves. Nasty Plot is always going to be a gross set. And it does give access to Weather Ball this gen, as well as Body Slam, Electro Ball, Lash Out, and Rising Voltage. Honestly, it doesn't gain anything from Rising... it does actually gain from Rising Voltage, because I think it goes off of whether or not the adjacent Pokemon is on the floor. Lando T, I still think it's going to be really solid. Is it as good this gen? I don't think it is, because Intimidate has been nerfed. It's still going to be very good. It doesn't have a good Flying Stab though, because it loses Z moves. But I still think Lando T is going to be very solid, just not as good as it was before, which is surprising because it does get the benefits of Hidden Power gone. I just completely blanked on what the move was called. But yeah, definitely gets the benefits of Hidden Power being gone, but at the same time it loses like its main way of being able to break through a bulky Grass type. So I think you're probably going to see more defensive sets than you are offensive sets this gen. But it's still going to be very, very terrifying on either side. Learn Self-Destruct, Weather Ball, Body Slam, and Scorching Sands. Honestly, Scorching Sands is quite nice for a defensive set this gen. Especially because Intimidate has been nerfed. I think like Lando as a whole has been nerfed. That's probably because it was so prevalent in the last gen. Lando I is going to be Sand Force, and I think it's probably like down the bottom of here. I think it's still going to be very good. I think Lando is still very underappreciated, even without Sheer Force. Has a great moveset, great typing, great speed stat as well. So I think Lando is still going to be a pretty solid mon. I think people don't draft it because it's not Sheer Force, but it's still going to be really good. Tyrantrum this gen is probably no better than last gen, but I'd say it's actually probably like here-ish. It does gain Rock Blast, Close Combat, Body Slam, High Horsepower, Lash Out, Meteor Beam, and Scale Shot. Scale Shot and Close Combat are really nice buffs for it this gen. High Horsepower, I think it gets Earthquake, but at least it can hit through grassy terrain, and that's always a benefit when there's two very prevalent grassy terrain users. Yeah, I think it's always been pretty solid. Defensive-wise, it's actually pretty good, and offensively, like super scary, really good dual stabs, and two really good abilities in Strong Jaw and Rockhead. Head Smash hits really hard. It gets Outrage as well. I think you could probably run like Head Smash, Scale Shot, Close Combat, and be able to hit pretty much everything that you need to. So Tyrantrum's definitely looking like a threat. Aurorus, I love this mon. It's so good. I'm gonna put it here, and people will say that's overrated, but like I don't think you can really overrate Scarf Blizzard with Snow Warning. Like it does a lot of damage. Tends to need to only run like 4 moves in Blizzard, Freeze Dry, Earth Power, and I would say now Meteor Beam with Power Herb definitely gives it some kind of utility. You could still run Meteor Beam and try and catch a switch and click Meteor Beam on the switch, but that's a little bit risky. It is very weak to a lot of types, but I still think it's a very good mon. Like Specs Blizzard or Scarf Blizzard, or potentially even Meteor Beam and Power Herb now. Potentially a really strong threat with Rock Polish as well. It does gain access to Weather Ball, Rock Blast, and Icicle Spear, but I feel like its physical side is not as good, and if you're going to run it physical, you probably want to run like Refrigerate with Double Edge or something like that. So yeah, Carbink is still going to be tier 5. It does gain Body Press, but it's not going to be enough to really make it that good. I think it's probably better than Jinx though. It's still a bulky mon with Stealth Rock, but it's not going to be really that great this gen. Zygarde 10% I think is probably like down here. It's still going to be good. I think you're going to be able to get a lot of value out of it, especially with no hidden power ice. But at the same time, it's kind of underwhelming. It needs like 2 Dragon Dances most of the time to be able to really do what, like to sweep through a team, and it's just not bulky enough to do so. Zygarde 10% is going to be just terrifying this gen. Sorry, 50%. Both Zygardes gain Body Slam, Reversal, High Horsepower, Scale Shot, Scorching Sands, and Skitter Smack. Skitter Smack is actually a bigger buff than you might think, because now it can hit grass types for super effective damage. It also has the ability to run Scale Shot, so it doesn't need to run Dragon Dance to boost its speed. Although I think you probably want to run it anyway. It can also run Coil, it can run Glare, it gets like plenty of... it's got plenty of bulks and plenty of utility, so I think that Zygarde has just got like so much going for it this gen. No hidden power is huge for it, and yeah, I think Zygarde's going to be an absolute menace this gen. Zygarde Diancie is looking pretty good. I think it might be like up here somewhere. It gains Draining Kiss, Mystical Fire, Amnesia, Bats and Pass, Encore, Stall Power, Play Rough, Body Press, Meteor Beam, and Misty Explosion. All really good for it. Like Draining Kiss sets with Calm Mind could be really scary, especially because it now gets Stall Power as well. That's like an extra move to have. It has Mystical Fire to be able to hit Steel types. It has Body Press on the physical side to hit Steel types. It has Play Rough on the physical side, so tons of new moves. If Mega Diancie was around, that would be just absolutely absurd this gen. But I think Diancie is still a really solid like tier 4 mon. Really good bulk, solid attack stat despite the fact that or attacking stats, considering it's like considered a bulky mon. I think it's still got like base 100 attacking stats. So yeah, I think Diancie is very solid. Volcanion gains Rain Dance, Thunderfang, Misty Terrain, Heavy Slam, Heat Crash, Body Press, and Scorching Sands. Honestly, I think Scorching Sands might be the biggest buff of all of them. It's going to be probably like bottom end tier 2. You tend to see it kind of like float between tier 2 and tier 3, but I think it's just about tier 2. I think it's too good a value for tier 3. It's still going to be very good. Heavy Duty Boots will definitely help it out this gen because it's a good defogger. Steam Eruption obviously hits really hard and has the chance to burn. Water Fire is a good stab combination with access to things like now Scorching Sands to be able to hit, I don't know, what's a Scorching Sands hit that doesn't normally hit, but Water Fire hits a lot of the game, to be fair. So really it just needs something to hit water types. I guess it gains Thunderfang now, so it has that, but Coco, straight up to top. Coco gains Close Combat, Store Power, Play Rough, Misty Explosion, Rising Voltage, and Terrain Pulse. Honestly, Rising Voltage, Play Rough, and Close Combat by itself might be enough to put it into the Ubers tier. Like, just straight up, might be too good for Draft League. I think it probably will be. But if not, it is absolutely top tier of tier 1. This mon was a threat in every gen it's been in. Doesn't gain hidden power, obviously, this gen, but it was never a mon that necessarily needed it. It gets Dazzling Gleam, it gets Rising Voltage now to hit super hard, and also it gets Grass Knot to hit ground types anyway. Between like Dazzling Gleam and Grass Knot, you hit quite a lot of ground types actually for good damage. So I don't think you're necessarily missing hidden power that much at all. Then you got Store Power to hit things like, I know if you want to hit Nidoking or Nidoqueen, for example, in this gen, you got Store Power, you can run Carmine Store Power, and it hits for really good damage. And then on the physical side, you got Close Combat, you got Wild Charge, Brave Bird, Play Rough. Like, it's just got so much utility, like Light Screens, Reflect, Defog. Like, this mon is nuts. Like, it's just going to have so much going for it. Tapu Lele, I think, is up there. I think it's actually worse than Coco somehow, but it does gain Future Sight, Store Power, Play Rough, Expanding Force, Misty Explosion, and Terrain Pulse. Like, it's Expanding Force, Tapu Lele, I don't need to say more. It's like, it's going to be very good. Also, like, the Iron Defense, Carmine, Draining Kiss set are even better with Store Power. So yeah, Lele is going to be absurd, and again, I think these two might potentially get banned. If they don't, then it's going to be without like Rising Voltage and Expanding Force. I think that's like the one thing that kind of pushes them over the edge. Bulu, I think, is going to be like really strong tier 1. This gen, it actually gains a Fairy Stab in Play Rough. It gets Bellet Seed, Close Combat, Store Power, Play Rough, Dark Lariat, High Horsepower, Glassy Glide, Misty Explosion, and Terrain Pulse. High Horsepower is really nice to be able to hit through its own terrain. It hits things like Steel types, but then against Close Combat, so honestly it doesn't matter too much. I guess High Horsepower hits the Fire types as well, but this mon is going to be an absolute massive threat in this gen with access to Grassy Glide as well. Like Banded, Grassy Glide is going to be the hardest hitting in the game, minus like a Kartana in Grassy Glide, in Grassy Terrain. Like, it's going to be absurd. I think this thing is going to be really good this gen, and it was good in previous gens. Lele, I think, is going to be like here-ish. I think it's going to be, as it always is, very strong in tier 2. Draining Kiss, Store Power, Play Rough, Flip Turn, Misty Explosion, Terrain Pulse. Flip Turn is huge for it because it can now just keep switching in and out. It's a really good pivot. Store Power is really nice for Carmine sets, as well as Draining Kiss actually gives it recovery now. So I think Finny's going to be very strong this gen. Carmine sets, I think, are going to be kind of busted, but yeah, not to the extent in which they're going to be banned, but I think it's going to be very good this gen. Still Bulky Water, Bulky Fairy. Yeah, kind of good, kind of really good this gen. Nihilego, I think, is also going to be in tier 2. Honestly, I think it's probably better than Lowe's. It's fast poison rock type with self rocks, toxic spikes, good special attack, good special defense. Now gains access to Rock Slide, Rock Tomb, Cross Poison, Hex, Body Slam, Corrosive Gas, and Meteor Beam. Honestly, I think Corrosive Gas and Hex are the two biggest buffs. Hex gives it something to hit psychic types that it really struggles with, especially if you set up Toxic Spikes. And Corrosive Gas is really nice for actually just removing items, effectively giving it knockoff without doing the damage. Buzzwole is probably solid like tier 2. I'd probably put it around here-ish. Body Slam, Close Combat, Dark Lariat, High Horsepower, Coaching, and Dual Wing Beat. Honestly, the best move there is Close Combat, because in the past it had to lower its speed or lower its attack using Superpower or Hammer Arm. Now it can use Close Combat, which is much more spammable. High Horsepower is nice coverage, as is Dual Wing Beat. So I think it's going to be pretty solid this gen. Already had a good attack stat, really good bulk. I think Buzzwole is going to be really strong. Circuitry, I think, is probably like down here somewhere. Still going to be good. Still super high attack stat, but Electro Ball and Rising Voltage are all it learns. I think with Tail Glow, it still gets Grass Knot, Dazzling Gleam. It has some coverage, as well as Thunderbolt, Volt Switch, things like that. It's not really any better than the previous gen. In fact, it's probably worse because of no hidden power, but it's still really good. I think it's got enough coverage to be able to break through the things that it needs to. Celesteela, honestly, is going to be like up here. It's a dumb mon. Super bulky with Leech Seed, Protect, Toxic, Sub, all that sort of shit, and now gains Cosmic Power on top of that. So outside of that, it gains Self-Destruct, Body Slam, Mega Horn, Grass Glide, and Steel Roller. Honestly, none of those moves matter. Cosmic Power does. Cosmic Power is just going to be ridiculous on this thing. It's already super bulky. You can always run Autotomize sets as well. You can run like an Autotomize, Cosmic Power, Weakness Policy set. Half the time all you need is like Heavy Slam and Earthquake to break through a team anyway. So yeah, Celesteela is going to be a problem. Kartana is also going to be in tier 1. I think it's going to be like up here somewhere. Kartana in grassy terrain, you're going to see that a lot. Just be prepared to see it. It's going to be happening so much this gen. Grassy Glide, where's the music? Grassy Glide and Solar Blade means that it can be on a Sun team, but honestly you're risking everything by putting it on a Sun team. But it can be now on one. Grassy Glide though just kind of makes it absolutely absurd. You can run Choice Band, Grassy Glide, and just start breaking through things, getting those beast boosts, and yeah, going nuts. Guzzlord, solid mon, gains body slam, amnesia, heat crash, high horsepower, body press, lash out, and steel roller. I think this thing is still in tier 4. As much as I would love to say it goes up, I think it's still in tier 4. I don't think it's amazing. In fact, I think that's probably even too high for it. I think it's above Sceptile. Actually, it's probably above Ordino. I'll put it there. It's super bulky, great coverage. It's just a terrible one. Like, it hasn't got the offensive stats to really do too much. And also, it's super slow. Its typing is kind of bad. It's kind of good and kind of bad at the same time. Like, Hydreigon is quicker and with better offensive stats, so that's why it's really good. This is the opposite. It's like a defensive mon, and I think its defensive type, Dragon Dark, is just not that good. So yeah, Guzzlord I think is a little underwhelming. It'll be in tier 4 regardless of what moves it learns. I don't think it learns enough to be able to push it anywhere up. Poipole is going to be like a tier 5 mon. It does gain Toxic Spikes in this gen, so it has more of a niche. But it's still like a little cut mon with good stats, effectively. Stack Attacker I think is going to be a big threat this gen. It gains access to Body Slam, Heavy Slam, Heat Crash, High Horsepower, Body Press, Meteor Beam, and Steel Roller. Heavy Slam is huge for it. It's super heavy. It's a big brick wall. Body Press, it's got base 211 defense. So Body Press is going to be doing a stupid amount of damage. It gets Heat Crash to be able to break through bulky steels, I guess. It also can break through grass types with that. And of course it's super heavy, so it's going to be doing a lot. In Trick Room, I think it's arguably one of the best Trick Room sweepers now around. So yeah, Stack Attacker looking like a problem. Also defensively, just really good. Solid defensive typing, albeit weak to ground and rock. You can avoid that, then it's actually got a really good defensive typing. And yeah, like it's access to stealth rock and things like that. It's a really solid mon. I think you're going to see a lot of use from it in this gen. And then last up, we've got Blacephalon. I actually think it's probably worse than Stack Attacker. I'm going to put it there. Always a solid offensive threat. This gen gains Fire Punch, Solar Beam, Self-Destruct, Rock Blast, Shadow Claw, Mystical Fire, Encore, Zen Headbutt, Expanding Force, and Scorching Sands. Scorching Sands is a nice coverage option for it on the special side. Solar Beam is really nice if you want to run it on a Sun team. I can see Blacephalon being absolutely absurd on Sun teams this gen with Solar Beam. Means it can hit water types super effectively. Other than that, it's just giving it a lot of physical moves like Rock Blast for some reason, Zen Headbutt, Fire Punch, Shadow Claw, like tons of utility on the physical side. I still think it's going to be pretty good. Like I think it's a solid mon, but I think like things like Stack Attacker have just got so much more buffed. Same with Buzzwole. I think it's still going to be a really solid tier 2 mon. Some people probably put it in tier 1, to be honest. But I think that other things, Power Creep, have kind of put this down a little bit, because I think its Power Creep is not as significant. But anyway, that's going to wrap up our list. See if I can get everything in on the screen. No, you know what? I'll cut off the Ubers, because like the Ubers are Ubers. Actually, you know what? We'll get rid of Metang, Altaria, and Poipole. This is the tiers. This is where I think things are going to be in the Crown Tundra tier listing. I'm sure you're going to be way off on some things. Like I think Garchomp In fact, Garchomp is going to be tier 1. Like, Cress and Garchomp will be tier 1. Heatran's probably going to be tier 1. Finny's probably... Like, all of these mons are probably going to be tier 1, in all honesty. Like, in terms of where they're going to be in this gen, like, honestly, I can see, like, that being a thing. Actually, I think Suicune probably comes down 1. But I think all these are going to be in tier 1. But in my own rankings, like, in terms of where I think they belong, I think, like, honestly, these mons are going to be in, like, they're going to be tier 1, but they're, like, tier 2 in comparison to everything else, if that makes sense. So, I know I've moved these up, but that's because I realized, you know, tier 2, what you have in tier 2 currently is, these mons are probably better than most of what's in tier 2, but these mons were definitely better. So, there's going to be a lot of additions to tier 1, I think, this gen. Or with this DLC, even. But yeah, I'm going to wrap up the video because I'm already running late for work. So if you did enjoy the video, please do leave a like and subscribe. The support is greatly appreciated. I've been, after the BBR season's finished, I hope to upload like tons of Draft League content and try and like do some educational stuff, all that sort of thing. So yeah, make sure to check out any videos that I put out in the future if you want to. Obviously, it's your life, you do what you want. But until the next one, have a great day, guys. Peace.